The massive Imperial ship emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, its dark hull blocking out distant stars. On the bridge of the Earth Defense Force flagship, Guardian, Admiral James Walker watched the tactical display with calm eyes. 20 years of service had prepared him for this moment, humanity's first contact with alien life. "They're broadcasting on all frequencies, sir," reported Lieutenant Smith, her fingers dancing across the communications panel. "The translation software is processing their message." Walker straightened his uniform. Humanity had spent the last century preparing for this exact scenario. The bunkers were ready. The orbital defense platforms were armed but hidden. Most importantly, the evacuation protocols were in place if things went wrong. The alien message flickered to life on the main screen. A tall figure appeared, its scaled skin reflecting the light of distant stars. High Commander Stone of the Galactic Empire spoke with absolute authority. "Primitive species of Sol 3, you will submit to the Empire's rule immediately. Your resources and population will serve the greater good of our civilization. Resistance is..." Walker cut the transmission. He had heard enough. "Send them our standard greeting package," he ordered. "Make sure they understand we're willing to establish peaceful diplomatic relations as equals, but we will not submit to any foreign power." Hours passed in tense silence. The Imperial ship remained motionless, its massive form casting a shadow over Mars. Finally, they responded. "Your defiance is noted, creatures of Sol 3. High Commander Stone's voice boomed through the speakers. "The Empire has ruled 10,000 worlds for 50,000 years. Your primitive civilization will be a simple conquest. Prepare for your first lesson in humility." The Imperial ship's weapon ports began to glow. Walker sighed and pressed a button on his chair. "All defense platforms, disengage stealth mode. Show them what they're dealing with." Across the solar system, thousands of automated defense platforms shimmered into view. They had been there all along, waiting, watching. The Empire had walked right into humanity's prepared killing field. "Sir," Lieutenant Smith called out, "they're charging their main weapon." Walker nodded. "Let them fire first. Follow standard protocol." The Imperial ship launched its attack, a massive energy beam that could shatter a moon. It never reached Earth. A network of energy shields, built from decades of reverse engineering crashed alien tech, absorbed the blast completely. "Send the warning message," Walker commanded. "The one we prepared 100 years ago." The message was simple, broadcast in every known alien language they had decoded from crashed ships over the centuries. "We have watched the stars for centuries. We have studied your weapons, your tactics, your technology. We recovered your crashed ships. We learned. We prepared. We gave you a chance for peace. You chose war. Remember this moment. Remember that we warned you. You should have run." The defense platforms opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of quantum-tipped missiles, designed specifically to penetrate Imperial shields, streaked across space. The massive Imperial ship, for all its power, had never faced weapons specifically crafted to kill it. High Commander Stone's face appeared one last time on the screen, shock evident in his alien features. "Impossible. You're just primitives. How did you?" The transmission cut off as the first missiles struck. The Imperial ship's shields flickered and died. Secondary explosions bloomed across its hull like deadly flowers. Within minutes, the mighty vessel broke apart, its remnants scattered across space. Walker stood up, straightening his uniform again. "Send a message to command. Tell them it's begun. Initiate War Plan Omega." "Sir," Lieutenant Smith asked, "do you think they'll come back?" Walker looked at the debris field that was once an Imperial warship. "Of course they will. Their pride won't let them do anything else. But that's exactly what we've been counting on." He turned to face his crew. "For 300 years, we've picked up their transmissions. We've studied their tactics, their technology, their weaknesses. We knew they were coming. And we knew they would never accept equals." He walked to the tactical display, watching as Earth's defense forces began to mobilize. They think they're starting a war of conquest. What they don't realize is that they just walked into our trap. Humanity has been preparing for this fight since we first found their crashed scout ship in Roswell. The crew watched as thousands more defense platforms decloaked throughout the solar system. Earth's cities transformed, revealing their true nature as massive military bases. This wasn't the beginning of humanity's extinction. This was the start of the Empire's nightmare. The war had begun, and humanity was ready. The Imperial Council chamber fell silent as the hologram of High Commander Stone's destruction played for the 12th time. 50 of the Empire's highest-ranking officials watched the primitive humans obliterate their most advanced warship with disturbing ease. Fleet Commander Gray stood up, his ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's lights. "This is clearly some kind of trick," he declared. "No primitive species could possibly develop such weapons without our knowledge. They must have stolen the technology." The Emperor, a figure shrouded in shadows at the head of the table, spoke quietly. "Stolen or not, they destroyed one of our best ships." "A lucky shot," Gray insisted. "Give me command of the Third Fleet. I will show you how easily these humans break when faced with real power." His confidence echoed through the chamber. After all, the Empire had conquered thousands of worlds. What was one more? The Emperor waved his hand in approval. "Very well. Take the Third Fleet. Show these humans the price of defiance." 3 days later, 500 Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace around Jupiter. Fleet Commander Gray stood proudly on his command bridge, watching his forces spread out in the Empire's standard conquest formation. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're detecting strange energy readings from the gas giant's moons." Gray dismissed the warning with a wave. "Natural phenomena. These humans can't possibly have expanded beyond their homeworld yet. Begin the advance." The fleet moved forward in perfect formation, just as they had done in countless conquests before. That's when the moons of Jupiter opened fire. Massive rail guns, hidden in crater bases, launched tungsten rods at near-light speed. Each impact carried the force of a nuclear weapon. Before the Imperial fleet could react, 30 ships had been torn apart. "Impossible," Gray shouted as his tactical display lit up with red alerts. "Return fire. Full spread." But the humans weren't finished. Small, fast ships emerged from hidden bases on the moons, darting between the Imperial vessels. They were barely a tenth the size of Imperial warships, but their weapons cut through shields designed to stop much larger attacks. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the human forces." Admiral Walker's face appeared on the main screen. "Fleet Commander Gray, I presume. We've studied your tactics for generations, the famous hammer of the Empire formation. Very impressive against enemies who fight the way you expect. Unfortunately for you, we don't." Gray watched in horror as his perfectly ordered fleet fell into chaos. The humans weren't fighting like any species they had encountered before. They didn't mass their forces for grand battles. They struck from multiple directions, disappeared, then struck again. "All ships, maintain formation," Gray ordered, but it was already too late. His fleet was scattered, each ship trying to defend itself against enemies they couldn't effectively target. "You still don't understand, do you?" Walker's voice came through again. "We've had centuries to prepare. Every weakness in your ships, every flaw in your tactics. We know them all. Those primitive humans you dismissed. We've been recording your transmissions, studying your battles, and preparing our defenses since before you knew we existed." The battle lasted less than an hour. When it was over, 300 Imperial ships were destroyed or disabled. The rest retreated in disorder, something no Imperial fleet had done in 1,000 years. In the Imperial Council chamber, the Emperor watched the battle recordings in silence. The humans hadn't just won. They had shattered the myth of Imperial invincibility. Worse, the news was already spreading through the Empire's communications networks. Other species were watching, learning, wondering if the mighty Empire wasn't so mighty after all. "Send in the 4th Fleet," the Emperor commanded. "And the 5th, and the 6th. These humans want a war. We'll give them one they'll never forget." But in his private chambers later that night, the Emperor reviewed the humans' warning message again. "We warned you. You should have run." For the first time in his long reign, he felt something he had never experienced before: doubt. 3 months into the war, General John Miller stood in Earth's Central Command, watching holographic displays of battles happening across 50 star systems. Each display showed the same thing: Imperial forces struggling against human guerrilla tactics. "Report from the Mars Defense Force, sir," his aide announced. "They've successfully used the tunneling vehicles to destroy another Imperial ground base. The Empire still hasn't figured out we can move through solid rock." Miller nodded, allowing himself a small smile. The Empire had expected a standard ground war. Instead, human forces appeared from underground, struck hard, and disappeared before the enemy could respond. "What about Project Ghost?" he asked. "The AI combat systems are performing better than expected. Imperial ships can't track our drones because they don't understand how a warship can function without a crew." On the main screen, a battle unfolded near Alpha Centauri. Imperial warships fired at empty space, while human-made AI drones slipped through their defense grid. The drones were tiny, barely larger than fighter craft, but each carried enough firepower to cripple a capital ship. "They're still trying to fight us like we're a regular enemy," Miller observed. "They haven't adapted at all." In another sector, human forces demonstrated why this was such a fatal mistake. A small fleet of Earth ships suddenly appeared inside an Imperial formation. The Empire had never developed good defenses against stealth technology. They'd never needed to. Every species they'd conquered fought exactly the way they expected. "Message from Admiral Walker's fleet," the communications officer called out. "Operation Trojan is ready to begin." Miller straightened. This was the moment they'd been waiting for. Give the go-ahead. Across Imperial space, seemingly defeated human ships drifted lifelessly. The Empire had captured hundreds of them, believing they'd won great victories. Now, as planned, these ships came to life. Their hulls split open, revealing hidden weapons and troops. The Empire's own prize ships became their doom. "Sir," his aide reported with excitement, "Imperial bases are falling across 20 systems. Their commanders can't understand how we're attacking them from inside their own secured zones." The Empire's response was predictable. They sent in more ships, more troops, fighting exactly as their military doctrine demanded. But humanity had studied that doctrine for centuries. They knew every move before it happened. In the Sirius system, human ships demonstrated another tactic the Empire had never seen. Instead of fighting as individual units, they linked their computer systems together, becoming one interconnected fleet. Imperial commanders couldn't understand why their tactics weren't working. They were fighting what seemed like a single giant organism that could react instantly to any threat. "Update from intelligence," the aide reported. "The Empire's military structure is starting to crack. Their officers don't know how to handle defeats. Some are refusing to engage our forces at all." Miller watched as another Imperial fleet retreated from a battle. The mighty Empire, which had conquered thousands of worlds through sheer force, had no answer for an enemy that refused to fight on their terms. "They still don't understand," he said quietly. "We're not fighting the way they expect because we've had centuries to think of better ways. Every tactic they use, we've already planned for. Every strategy they try, we've already countered." On his private screen, Miller reviewed the latest casualty reports. Despite humanity's successes, they were still taking losses. But unlike the Empire, they had planned for a long war. Every defeat taught them something new. Every victory proved their preparations had been worth it. "Message from Earth Command," the communications officer announced. "The President wants to know if we should implement Phase 4. Miller studied the battle displays one last time. The Empire was still dangerous, still powerful. But they were also rigid, unchanging, trapped in their own success. They couldn't adapt because they'd never needed to before. "Tell Command it's time," he ordered. "Let's show the Empire why they should have taken our warning seriously. Begin Phase 4, Operation Liberation." As the orders went out, Miller thought about how the Empire still didn't realize the truth. They weren't just fighting humanity. They were fighting every lesson humanity had learned from centuries of war against itself. Every dirty trick, every desperate strategy, every unconventional tactic that humans had ever developed was now turned against them. The Empire had wanted a war. Instead, they got a revolution. The alien prisoner stood in Admiral Walker's office aboard the Guardian, his chains removed. He belonged to a species called the Runners, named for their exceptional speed and agility. The Empire had enslaved his people centuries ago. "You want to teach us how to fight?" the Runner asked, his large eyes blinking in disbelief. Walker nodded. "We've studied your people's history. Before the Empire came, you were warriors. Great ones. They didn't just take your freedom, they took your pride." Across human-controlled space, similar conversations were happening. Earth's forces had discovered that the Empire's greatest weakness wasn't their rigid tactics or outdated technology. It was the billions of slaves and subjects they'd oppressed for generations. "Operation Liberation is proceeding as planned," Lieutenant Smith reported during the daily briefing. "Rebel cells are forming on 300 Imperial worlds. The Empire's own communication network is helping spread the word." The Empire had never imagined their subjects would revolt. They'd ruled through fear for so long, they'd forgotten that fear only works until something more powerful comes along. Now humanity was offering something the Empire couldn't understand: hope. On the mining world of Centauri Prime, the first major uprising began. The Empire's guards found themselves facing workers armed with human weapons and trained in human tactics. These weren't the usual desperate riots they were used to crushing. These rebels fought smart, used the terrain, and most importantly, they weren't afraid anymore. "Message from the rebel force on Centauri Prime," Smith announced, excitement in her voice. "They've taken the main garrison." The Imperial forces tried to use their standard riot control tactics, just like we predicted. Walker watched the tactical display as more planets lit up with rebellion. The Empire had spent centuries teaching their subjects to be obedient. They never considered that this made their security forces predictable. Every guard followed the same protocols. Every garrison had the same weaknesses. "Sir," Smith called out, "the Runners have taken control of their homeworld. They're requesting to join the Free Systems Alliance." The Free Systems Alliance had been humanity's idea. A coalition of liberated worlds fighting together against the Empire. Each species brought their own strengths. The Runners' speed made them perfect for hit-and-run attacks. The rock-dwelling miners could tunnel through defenses. The atmospheric-dwelling floaters could strike from directions the Empire never guarded. "Another Imperial fleet has surrendered," reported the tactical officer. "They're saying their crews revolted after learning about the Alliance." Walker pulled up the latest intelligence reports. The Empire's hold on power was cracking. Their own soldiers, many from conquered worlds, were beginning to question their loyalty. The promise of freedom was stronger than centuries of conditioning. In the Orient sector, a combined human-alien fleet demonstrated this new reality. Runner ships darted between Imperial formations, too fast to track. Miner vessels appeared from within asteroids, striking from impossible angles. Human aerodromes coordinated it all, turning chaos into a deadly dance. "Sir," Smith said quietly, "we're getting reports of Imperial citizens joining the rebellion. They're saying they never knew what their empire really was until they saw us fighting it." This was something the Empire's leaders had never prepared for, their own people turning against them. Humanity hadn't just brought weapons and tactics to the galaxy. They'd brought dangerous ideas about freedom, dignity, and self-determination. Walker looked at the runner standing in his office. "Your people were warriors once," he said. "Would you like to be warriors again?" The runner stood straighter, pride showing in his stance for the first time. We remember how to fight. We just needed someone to remind us that we could. As reports of more uprisings flooded in, Walker thought about how the Empire still didn't understand. They thought they were fighting a war against one species. Instead, they had started a revolution that would reshape the galaxy. The Empire had ruled through fear and force. Humanity offered something different, a chance to fight back. And across the galaxy, billions of beings were taking that chance. The Emperor watched his empire crumble through the windows of his palace on the Imperial capital world. In the distance, anti-aircraft fire lit up the night sky as loyal forces fought against yet another rebellion. Even here, in the heart of Imperial power, the humans' influence had spread. Your Majesty, Fleet Commander Gray knelt before the throne, his once pristine armor now battle-scarred. We've lost contact with the Orient sector. The entire region has declared independence under the Free Systems Alliance banner. The Emperor's fingers dug into his throne's armrests. How? How have these humans done this to us? My Emperor, a new voice spoke up. Lord Marcus, head of Imperial Intelligence, stepped forward. We've discovered something disturbing about their tactics. They're not just fighting us. They're teaching others how to fight us. On screens around the throne room, reports flowed in from across the galaxy. Imperial garrisons, once thought impregnable, fell to combined forces of humans and former Imperial subjects. Every species brought its own strengths to the battlefield, coordinated by human AI systems. Worse, Marcus continued, they're using our own propaganda against us. Every time we broadcast messages about human savagery, they respond by showing our subjects how to be free. They're not just winning battles, they're winning hearts. Gray slammed his fist on a tactical display. Then we'll crush them with pure force. We still have the numbers. We've lost another fleet. An aide interrupted, rushing into the chamber. Admiral Thompson's forces. They surrendered without a fight. The Emperor rose slowly from his throne. Surrendered? Thompson was one of our most loyal commanders. Sir, the aide's voice shook. The crew revolted. They said they were tired of fighting for lies. This was the Empire's worst nightmare. Their own military, trained from birth to be loyal, was beginning to question orders. The humans had somehow done what no species had managed in 50,000 years. They'd made Imperial citizens doubt their leaders. In orbit above the capital, the mighty Imperial home fleet held position. But even here, uncertainty spread. Officers watched their long-range sensors, waiting for the human forces that had demolished every fleet sent against them. Crew members whispered in corridors about the rebellions spreading across the galaxy. My Emperor, Marcus spoke again. We've intercepted communications from the human command. They call this psychological warfare. They're not just attacking our ships. They're attacking our will to fight. The Emperor turned to his military commanders. How many fleets do we have left? The answers came reluctantly. Half the Imperial Navy was either destroyed, captured, or had defected. The other half was tied up fighting rebellions across thousands of worlds. The mighty Empire, which had seemed invincible just months ago, was being torn apart from within. Perhaps, a quiet voice suggested, we should consider negotiating with the humans. The room fell silent. Such words would have meant instant death just weeks ago. Now, several officials nodded in agreement. Never, Gray shouted. We cannot show weakness. Another aide burst into the room. My Emperor, the humans, they've broadcast the truth about the early wars. They've shown everyone how the Empire really began. The Emperor sank back into his throne. This was the final blow. The humans had discovered the Empire's darkest secret, that it had been built on lies, manipulation, and the systematic destruction of ancient cultures. Now that truth was spreading faster than Imperial sensors could contain it. In the distance, more explosions lit up the capital sky. The Empire wasn't just losing a war. It was losing its grip on history itself. The humans had somehow learned what no other species had discovered in 50,000 years, the Empire's foundation of lies. "Your Majesty," Marcus said softly, "what are your orders?" The Emperor stared at the battle reports, at the growing list of worlds declaring independence, at the evidence of his life's work dissolving before his eyes. For the first time in Imperial history, there was only one word he could say: run. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the upgraded Guardian, now twice its original size and integrated with technology from a dozen liberated worlds. Before him, the largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history prepared for the final push toward the Imperial capital. "All Free Systems Alliance forces report ready," Lieutenant Smith announced. Her console showed 10,000 ships of various designs, human vessels mixed with runner scout ships, massive minor battlecruisers, and ships from dozens of other freed species. "Time to show them what we've been hiding," Walker said quietly. "Activate Protocol Omega." Across the combined fleet, hidden compartments opened on every human vessel. What emerged made even their allies gasp. Massive weapon systems, far more advanced than anything the Empire had seen, powered up for the first time. "Sir," Smith reported with a smile, "the runner ships are asking what exactly we've been holding back." Walker allowed himself a small grin. "Tell them that humanity didn't just prepare for first contact. We prepared for this exact moment." The human ships began to transform. Armor plates shifted, revealing layers of technology that had remained hidden throughout the war. The Empire had thought they were fighting primitive humans. They never realized they were fighting an enemy who had spent centuries preparing for this final battle. "Message from Earth Command," Smith announced. "Project Phoenix is ready." On the tactical display, thousands of new signals appeared. Hidden shipyards throughout human space activated, releasing vessels that had been built in secret over generations. These weren't just warships. They were humanity's masterpiece of military engineering. "All ships," Walker commanded, "begin the advance." Operation Endgame is now in effect. The combined fleet moved forward, jumping through hyperspace in waves. They emerged around the Imperial capital world in a pattern designed to counter every known Imperial defense tactic. But the Empire had one last surprise. Their home fleet was massive, nearly 20,000 ships strong. Fleet Commander Gray's voice boomed across all channels. "You see, the Empire still has teeth. All forces, attack." Walker watched calmly as the Imperial fleet charged forward. "They still don't understand," he said to his bridge crew. "Execute Phoenix Protocol." Suddenly, the space around the Imperial fleet lit up with strange energy readings. The human ships activated their most closely guarded secret, gravity manipulation technology. Imperial vessels found themselves caught in artificial gravity wells, their formations shattered. "Runner squadrons, you have your targets," Walker ordered. "Minor heavy units, begin your attack runs. All human ships, reveal final configuration." The battle that followed would be remembered for centuries. Runner ships darted between Imperial vessels at impossible speeds, their weapons guided by human AI systems. Minor ships used their advanced drilling technology, modified by human engineers, to tear through Imperial capital ships like paper. And the human vessels showed their true power: quantum weapons, gravity bombs, and temporal distortion fields, technology that humanity had developed in secret, waiting for this moment. The Empire's mighty home fleet began to crumble. "Sir," Smith called out, "Imperial Palace defenses are weakening." They never expected an attack to reach this far. Walker nodded. "Send in the ground forces. It's time to end this." Across the Imperial capital, drop pods landed carrying human marines fighting alongside runner warriors, minor shock troops, and soldiers from every species the Empire had once enslaved. They fought with weapons and tactics the Empire had never seen, coordinated by AI systems that could predict and counter every Imperial response. Fleet Commander Gray's desperate voice came through the comm system. "This is impossible. You're supposed to be primitives. How did you hide all this?" Walker opened a channel to reply. We didn't hide it. We showed you exactly what we were from the start. You just didn't want to see it. We warned you to run." The battle raged on, but its outcome was already clear. The Empire had ruled through fear and overwhelming force, but they had never faced an enemy who had spent centuries preparing specifically to defeat them. As Walker watched the Imperial defenses fall one by one, he thought about humanity's long preparation for this moment. They hadn't just built weapons. They had built hope for an entire galaxy. The Empire's reign was ending. Freedom's reign was about to begin. The Imperial throne room fell silent as Admiral Walker walked through its massive doors. Sunlight streamed through broken windows, illuminating the dust and debris from the final battle. The Emperor sat on his throne, watching as representatives from every freed species entered behind Walker. "You've won," the Emperor said simply. His voice echoed in the vast chamber. "But you don't understand what you've done. The Empire brought order to the galaxy." Walker stopped at the foot of the throne. "No, the Empire brought fear and slavery. We're here to bring something different." Behind him stood the leaders of the Free Systems Alliance, the Runner Chief with his lightning-quick reflexes, the Minor Elder whose crystalline skin sparkled in the sunlight, and dozens of others. Each had a story of oppression. Each now stood tall with pride restored. "Bring in the evidence," Walker commanded. Lieutenant Smith entered, carrying ancient data crystals recovered from deep within the Imperial archives. "These contain the true history," she announced. "How the Empire began by turning species against each other. How they erased cultures, rewrote histories, and built their power on lies." The Emperor rose, his facade of calm finally breaking. "You'll destroy everything. Without the Empire, the galaxy will fall into chaos." "No," Walker replied firmly. "We're going to build something better." He turned to address the gathered representatives. "Humanity didn't just prepare weapons for this war. We prepared plans for peace." On cue, massive holograms appeared in the throne room, showing the new galactic order being born. Former Imperial worlds celebrated their freedom. Ships from different species worked together, not in war, but in trade and exploration. The Empire's fall hadn't brought chaos. It had brought hope. "Commander Gray has surrendered the last Imperial fleet," Smith reported. "The war is officially over." Walker nodded, then faced the Emperor again. "You had 50,000 years to build something meaningful. Instead, you built a prison for entire civilizations. Now it's time for change." The Runner Chief stepped forward. "Our people remember what it means to be free. We will not forget again." The Minor Elder spoke next. "The Empire forced us to dig their mines. Now we'll use our skills to build, not destroy." One by one, representatives of former Imperial subjects spoke, each pledging to help build a new future. The Emperor watched in silence as everything he had believed crumbled before him. "What will you do with me?" he finally asked. Walker's response surprised everyone. "You'll stand trial. Not for revenge, but for truth. Every species deserves to know what really happened. Justice, not vengeance. That's the difference between us and you." Outside the palace, the capital city was transforming. Imperial symbols were being replaced with the new mark of the Free Systems Alliance, a circle of stars representing unity and independence. Ships from 100 worlds filled the skies, not in battle formation, but in celebration. "Message from Earth," Smith announced with a smile. "They're ready to implement the Commonwealth Protocol." Walker nodded. The Commonwealth Protocol was humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy. A system of government where every species had a voice, where technology and knowledge were shared, where cooperation replaced domination. "You warned us to run," the Emperor said quietly. "Why? You could have struck without warning." "Because," Walker explained, "we wanted to give you a choice. War wasn't our first option. It was our last. You chose this ending." As Imperial guards were led away and former slaves stepped into positions of leadership, Walker looked out over the city. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for first contact. hoping for peace but ready for war. They had built weapons, yes, but they had also built dreams of a better galaxy. "Send word to all worlds," he commanded. "The Empire is ended. The Commonwealth begins today." The sun set on the imperial capital for the last time. Tomorrow would bring a new dawn, not just for humanity, but for every species that had dared to dream of freedom. They had warned the Empire to run. The Empire had chosen to fight. Now, from the ashes of that choice, something new would rise. A galaxy where no species would ever have to run again.